Hi, everybody. My name is Denise Dudley, and I've been asked by the folks at LinkedIn to provide some tips on how to write the perfect thank you note after you've been on a job interview. So let's get started. First of all, you might be asking yourself, should I or should I not even write a thank you note? And the answer to that is 100% of the time, always yes. Always write a thank you note. I'm going to take it a step further and suggest to you that you write a thank you note even if you're not necessarily interested in the job that you've just applied for. Now, why would I say that? Because you want to be remembered by the interviewer as a positive person who's courteous and who does the right thing. You don't know what's going to happen next, and even if you don't want the job or you're not offered the job, now you've got somebody in your court who might be able to speak well of you in the future. Let's jump into what the letter is going to say. We're going to start with "Dear," and then the name of the person I interviewed with. Now you're going to ask yourself, do I use the first name or the last name of that interviewer? This has everything to do with whether the interviewer went casually or whether the interviewer was more formal with you. If it was a casual interview where you both spoke back and forth, you used each other's first names, you laughed a lot, no problem. Go with Dear John, Dear Mary, whatever their name was. If it was a little bit more of a formal interview, or if you're interviewing with an organization that's characteristically known to be more conservative, then you're going to want to say Dear Mr. Smith or Dear Ms. Garcia. In other words, go with the last name. So again, this has to do with what happened in the interview and the organization that you're also applying to. When in doubt, go with conservative. If you're not sure what to do and you're sitting on the fence about this question, always go with the Dear Mr. Smith, Dear Ms. Garcia. We follow that with a comma, not a colon, because this is a personal note. We want it to feel like a personal thank you note. So Dear Ms. Smith, Dear Mr. Garcia, whatever their name is, and comma. Now we're going to go into the body of the letter, and we're going to start with the words thank you or the word thanks. 100% of the time. There's no variation from this. There's a reason for it. We don't want to use a euphemism for thank you, such as, what a great time I had in the interview, or how fun that I just interviewed with you. Those are nice things to say, don't get me wrong, but we need to make sure we use the words thank you or the word thanks in order for the interviewer to know they have thoroughly been thanked. This is a brain thing, and I'm a psychologist, so I can talk about this for a second. The way our brains process information has a lot to do with the words that they're either seeing or hearing. And if I hear the word thanks, or I hear the word thank you, or see the word thanks or thank you, my brain is more likely to process and internalize the feeling of being thanked. So we start with thanks or thank you, and then we make that into a sentence. Thanks so much for the great interview today. The next sentence that I'm going to include is a specific piece of information that's directly related to the interview I just went through. Here's where we make sure that when the interviewer reads the note, that they don't think for 1 second that this was a generic thank you note. It must be specific to what happened in the interview. So now I have a choice of two things. I might choose to talk about a specific thing that I learned in the interview, such as, I was really glad to learn about Smith Industries' involvement in our local community, something like this, or I have an option to go personally. If you had a great interview with the person and you feel really good about your relationship, there's nothing wrong with going the personal route and saying something like, wow, I didn't know you were a Cubs fan too. Yay, Cubs. Let's hope they have a great season. Nothing wrong with that, because you want this thank you note to feel like a personal, positive, fun thing that this person is now reading. So something that's personal. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sentence that basically I'm going to say, is hopeful about the future, that I am eager about my future. Now this could be, I'm eager to be called back for a second interview, I'm eager to be offered the job, whatever it is they told you was the next step in the interview hiring process when you went in to your job interview. I'm eager to hear back from you. And then I also want to put in a second message of eagerness, and that has to do with, I want this job. There's nothing wrong with doing a little bit of self-marketing here and saying, from what I learned today, I believe I'm the perfect candidate for this, and I hope you'll call me back and offer me this position. I would do that. And now the last sentence is going to be another thank you, using the words thank you or thanks. There's something called the law of primacy and the law of recency. And it says the first thing that you hear and the last thing that you hear or read are going to be the things you most remember. And the stuff in the middle gets a little vague and fuzzy. So I want to make sure that the person reading my thank you note sees thank you at the beginning and thank you at the end. So there's no question about what this note is saying. It's offering up my thanks. So thank you one more time. Now we go to the close, which is going to be sincerely, comma, and my name. You could use yours very truly yours, but I wouldn't go off into something that's a little bit more creative or unconventional, like wishing you all kinds of fairy dust in your life or something like this, because it's not going to go over well. Stick with sincerely and then your name. Now, in this case, I'm going to use my first and last name, Sincerely Denise Dudley. Even if it was a positive kind of an interview where we spoke in first-person terms, I'm still going to say Denise Dudley. Why? Because when the interviewer is reading that letter, I want him or her to be able to immediately go back and reference my information. So they get an email from me, and it says, Sincerely Denise Dudley, and they go, yeah, Denise Dudley. Now, what were her credentials? What did her resume look like? And they can click it right in on their laptop, look it up again, and see whether I'm the person for the job or not. Underneath my name, I'm going to include my email address and my phone number. Why? Again, because I want to be findable right now. I don't want anybody to go to any trouble to try to relocate me in case they want to bring me back in. That's the letter. Now, people ask me another question that I want to address, and it's this. Do I send my thank you note via email in the form of the internet, or do I send it via a letter in the form of sending it through snail mail, through the postal service? Here's my answer to you, which is a little bit unconventional. I say always do both. You must do both. Here's why. What happens is that what I want to do is get my name and myself in front of that interviewer as much as possible in as positive a way as possible. So the first thing that happens is that I send out my email thank you note. That must go out within 24 hours of your interview. If you interviewed in the morning, great idea to send it by the end of the day. If you interviewed in the afternoon, I would wait till the next morning to send it, but never go longer than 24 hours. So 24 hours later, I get an email, if I'm the interviewer, from the person, my candidate I just interviewed with, and now I remember their name, and it's a favorable kind of a memory. A couple of days later, in comes an envelope to my desk addressed to me, and it's the snail mail version of my thank you note. Now, a couple of tricks to this. These two cannot match each other word for word. You have to actually create two separate letters. In other words, you can't just simply print the thing you sent via an email. You've got to make sure that you write a separate email and then a separate letter when you're going to write to somebody via snail mail. They can't match each other. You have to think of original copy. Well, I know what I'm saying is that means you're writing 2 thank you notes per interview, but I promise you it's worth it. And my final tip to you, it's my bonus tip, is that if you choose to do the snail mail route, which I hope you do, if you will handwrite it and hand address it, you are way ahead of the way. Because, think about this for a second. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in a dorm room listening to this video or you're the CEO sitting in an office in New York City. What do we do when we get our mail? We all do the same thing. I pick through it, I look for the bills, I look for whatever is automatic, and if I see a hand-addressed, handwritten note, I pull it out from the pile and I open it first because it's the most fun and exciting thing I can find. So I want to be, after an interview, I want to be the person you fished out and wanted to read first. Those are all my tips. Thanks so much. I'm Denise Dudley, and I'll see you again.